Okay. All right. So today's presentation, actually, you survived the other presentations. So this is your last one. So today we're going to be learning how to set those SMART goals, not just using your digital binder, but your source of how you track your data. I know some of us still like to do possibly a hard copying, meaning like a regular traditional binder. But since we're in the virtual world right now, a lot of us are trying to do those digital binders as well. I'm Diana Angeles. I am currently a teacher at Pasadena Elementary. This is my 17th year actually at Pasadena. I've had experience kinder through second. And this is my, if I'm not counting wrong, I think this is our 5th year. Actually, it's 6th year blended because our first year was pilot. And this is my 5th year actually implementing blended learning in my classroom. I'm happy to share that I'm a scholarship recipient. Isleta has offered a scholarship to some teachers to get certification, actually certified for blended learning, personalized learning through Texas Tech University, and actually offer this every year if I'm not incorrect. So if that opportunity is ever there and you're interested, I highly suggest you apply for it and cross your fingers that you might get it, because they pay for your 2 years of attending Texas Tech so you can get your certification for blended learning. And so far the experience with that has been really, really awesome, because it all makes sense, especially if your first year blended learning campus. Obviously it's something new, and getting to see the actual research side of it and implementing it one step at a time in your classroom, side by side with taking those courses, it all makes sense. I was already 3 years into blended learning, or 4 years into blended learning. So everything that I had learned before and now, totally, it's a total different meaning for me, and I do enjoy it more. At first I thought, I feel like I was still kind of lost and there was a lot of information, but now I see the purpose of it even more. All right, so a little bit of me making connections, right? We gotta make connections when we do blended learning, because that's how you're able to trust one another and show respect to each other when it comes to blended learning. This is my 17th year of teaching. I've taught kinder, first, and second. Yes, the presentation I'm going to show you today is set up for my first grade class, but to be honest, it can be transferred to actually any grade. You would just have to create possibly the SMART goals in a different way based on what grade you're in. So by all means, if you're in this presentation and you're teaching past second grade, middle school, high school, it's okay, because you can actually turn it around and make it fit your classroom environment. Aside from teaching, I have had an opportunity to be an after-school program coordinator. I don't think they have it anymore, but it used to be called Escuelita. And actually, I got to oversee some high school students and college students, help tutor K-8 students. And that was really interesting, because I actually had to not just be there to supervise, but I actually had to foresee what they were helping them in and how to kind of differentiate their activities we had there for them. So before blended learning was put into our campus, I kind of experienced it a little bit in this after school program, which was pretty interesting. A little bit of educational and classroom culture based on my background. I graduated from UTEP, got my bachelor's and my master's at UTEP. Also, currently I'm at Texas Tech getting certified for blended learning and personalized learning. And I did go to Sul Ross for a year for a new teacher novice program, which is really awesome. If you're here in this presentation, this is your first year teaching overall, aside from implementing blended learning. See if you can look into that program because it helps a lot, especially it being virtual. I can just imagine what's going through your mind and how you're feeling, possibly maybe overwhelmed because you're probably experiencing or thinking you didn't think you were going to go through something like this on your first year, but that notice really does help. And I can just imagine how it is now with this program, it being us being in a virtual world. Okay, so I hope you find this presentation purposeful and you gain some insight, just like Clark Griswold when he turns on his house and he's excited and finally it's working, and not boring and confused like that professor from Ferris Bueller who distracts, actually his students don't want to be there. So hopefully I don't make you feel that way. I hope I make you feel like Clark Griswold, excited and wanting to turn around and try it yourself. So why, where, and how do I start my SMART goals? I didn't do SMART goals before I got into the blended learning certification program. Why? Because I didn't know how to. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how to implement them. And I didn't know what I needed to use to go about creating those SMART goals. Yes, I had goals for myself and goals for my students, but I didn't know how to get my students to be part of creating those SMART goals. So I'm going to show you ways on how to do it face-to-face and virtual. I was so used to creating those SMART goals face-to-face, where we had, our traditional binder, especially in a first grade position. Technology is really step-by-step kind of process. And now that we're virtual, I had to learn first myself on how am I going to do this over, the computer with my students compared to when I'm sitting right there next to them, having that one-on-one interaction. So what you usually do need when you're going to go about creating those SMART goals, you need to know your design pillars for blended learning, and it's going to be pillar 1 and 3, and I'll show you those in a moment. You're going to need some source of data, and it can be a formal or informal assessment, and sometimes it doesn't actually have to be an assessment. It can be attendance, it could be some social emotional learning that you're doing in your classroom, especially now more than ever. Your data tracker, your source of data tracker, everybody's data tracker is a little bit different as you're going through the grades, and everybody creates their own data tracker. And also your SMART goal design. So it could be a simple handout that you have hard copy and you have them put in their binder, which usually we do that face-to-face, especially a little bit more towards the lower grades. As you get into the upper grades, it becomes more digital because they're a little bit more tech savvy. But now with our pre-K to second grade, they're becoming tech savvy just as much as our upper grade students. So those are the 4 things to keep in mind on how to go about your SMART goal. So how do I connect data to a goal? So become familiar with design pillar number 1, which is your data-driven instruction. That's where you're gonna decide. Let me show you what that looks like. If your campus is year 1, year 5, year 7 of blended learning, your campus should have access to the blended learning design pillars. And that breaks down each pillar and what you're expected to implement, what it is that you're looking for when it comes to that specific pillar. So for SMART goals, you're gonna need pillar 1, which is your data-driven instruction. That's where you're gonna have to figure out what source of data you're gonna use to focus on that goal or goals that you want to set with your students. Once you're familiar with your data, Then you're going to go to design pillar number 2, which is a student agency part, because yes, you're going to be guiding your students on how to create those SMART goals, because obviously you need to be the model for a while, especially for those lower grades. But as they become familiar, you want them to be held accountable for them creating their goals, for them to understand what is it that they need to do to achieve those goals, weekly, monthly, or every 9 weeks. It depends on how you want to set that up, and I'll go into that in a couple of slides later on. So here's pillar number 3. So pillar number 1 and 3 are the most important when it comes to creating those SMART goals. Now, some data sources that I keep in mind to decide what SMART goals I want to create. I made a list just to kind of guide you on where you can start. You can start very simple to something very advanced based on maybe an academic or a content area. So some areas that you can create a goal is your attendance, especially even now. We want to make sure that our kids are logging in. So maybe there's something going on with their attendance, and you can work with your student and even get your parents involved to achieve those goals if you want to make that a SMART goal. Behavior or some social emotional concept that you want to work with the student, especially now, because there's a lot going on, and learning in a virtual way it takes a toll on our students. It does. They don't voice it sometimes, but those that do voice it, it's very eye-opening. So creating a SMART goal for that is fine as well, because you don't have to make it academic. Another thing that you can look at is iStation. Those of you that are in elementary level, iStation is a source of data that you can use to create your SMART goal. You have milestones, that's K through 2nd. Foundations, that's K through 2nd, sometimes 3rd grade. Also Imagine Math. I'm not sure how far Imagine Math goes. I think it's K through 5th or 6th. And then you have your unit assessments, which this year it's a little bit different. And then you have other performance assessments that you might have. You can also use TELPAS, which is a big part of our how can I say it? It's one of the assessments that we actually look into every year, and a big picture where we need to work with our ELL learners, okay? All right, let's go to the next one. Data trackers. So everybody's data trackers are different. It just depends what grade you're in, what you create for your students. This that you see on this slide is the hard copy I use face-to-face. This is my face-to-face data tracker for iStation. It does look a little bit busy, as you can see, but now that we're doing remote learning, I had to really change things around, because it's a little bit different when it comes to modeling for your students on how to track their data. So I had to really, I guess you can say, downsize on how much I was presenting to them when it came to their SMART goal and tracking their data. So this would be if I were to be face-to-face, because I can go into more detail with them. But virtually, I kind of just took a chunk of what I usually have in my hard copy, and I just created it into a slide and made it very simple for them, for my students, for 1st grade. Kinder can use this, 1st grade, 2nd grade. I mean, any grade level can use something simple, just a basic graph. I have my students just click and drag their little squares to track their growth through iStation. And this is really eye-opening, because they make those connections to those graphs as they're testing throughout the components in iStation. If you're in middle school, you can use and create a graph and have them track the same way, but maybe do a more challenging type of graph than my kiddos would based on the grade level that they're in. We do Imagine Math. They only test 3 times out of the year for Imagine Math. So I kind of used a graph that they provided to the teachers on how we track our kids. So I kind of turned it around and made it kind of similar, same thing for my students. So they can use the same color coding that I have to follow. So when I meet with them to track their data, I understand where they're falling based on their scores. And this is the one for Imagine Math. I did not have an Imagine Math growth tracker when we were face-to-face. This is actually something I added this year, and it's helped a lot, even though we only test 3 to 4 times out of the year for Imagine Math. And it lets me know what I expect from them when they test the next time around. Now for Smart Goal Tracker, I will show you the one I used face-to-face, which was a little bit more in detail. It involved all the other types of data sources I used to create my SMART goals. But some things to keep in mind when you're creating those SMART goals. Have the students create those goals, of course, with your guidance. At the beginning, especially pre-K through probably second, you're showing them how to create those goals. You're showing them how to think about those goals, because if you just on the first day you create those goals with them and you ask them, okay, what goal do you want? They're not going to understand what that is. So you creating those goals for them and making them understand that they're going to be doing exactly what you're doing when they're ready. So they need to be very vigilant of how you're modeling with them and how you're tracking those goals with them. Also, you want to set goals based on what they analyze from their data. So obviously we have to train them how to analyze the data too. You can't just tell them, here's your data. Where do you think you're doing good? Where do you think you need to make more growth in? They're not going to understand that. Even in the upper grades, it's the same thing. They need a lot of guidance, especially now since we're not next to each other where you can get more one-on-one time. It's virtual, it's a lot different. So the way you're approaching it, you're gonna have to really think about how you're gonna do that, okay? SMART goals help them monitor if they're making progress within various learning habits. They also, they are tracking how rigorous the goal may be. So if you're gonna give them a goal that is challenging for them, you might want to revisit with them and make it a little bit more simpler for them. If it's too simple for them, then you know what, we need to kind of visit our goals again and kind of make them a little bit more challenging for them, just so they can keep making that progress they're already making. That's awesome. Keep them there or make them go a little bit further than they already are. And also the main reason for goals, a lot of us think, oh, it's just something additional for us to do. But honestly, it's not. It's not like for compliance or anything like that. It's to actually, it's something purposeful. It's part of it's part of them. It's part of their learning throughout the year. You want them to understand it's not just something to open up, track their data, track their goal. It's actually something that they're working towards to improve throughout the school year, okay? Now the SMART goal that I usually use, let me stop sharing here so I can show you the one I usually have in place. So you can see the difference when it came to being face-to-face and how I had to kind of really revamp everything and make it short and simple, only because I have the younger grades and their attention span is a little bit shorter. So when I meet with them for creating those SMART goals, it's got to be quick because there's so many distractions at home. And having those conversations, you want to keep them as meaningful as you can, but at the same time, you want to keep it short, simple, straight to the point because of those distractions that's going on at home or anything else that might be occurring in the environment they're in. Okay, so let me show you. Give me a second. Here we go. Okay, sorry. My computer's a little slow today. Okay, so when we were face to face, my smart goal tracker was a little bit more detailed. It was broken down way more than it is now. I used to base it off of by 9 weeks, or every 3 weeks, or bi-weekly, depending the data source that you're using. I also went into detail on the concepts that I want to focus the SMART goal on. It could be on reading, the writing, math, science. And if you're middle school and high school, depending on the subject you're teaching on, then you would just place the subject that you're teaching. If you're doing fine arts, also you can change all these subject areas and put the fine arts that you're working on. And then they would state their goal, simple, nothing too too challenging for them, because then you don't want them to get discouraged and kind of forget about what their SMART goal was about. You want to keep it very simple for them to be able to retain it themselves. And then you're going to decide, well, how are you going to measure that goal at the end? Are you going to do another unit assessment? Are you going to do a benchmark, daily work activities, writing samples? Are you going to meet and have a conference again? Obviously, which you should have a conference again when you have them meet with you to see if they make growth to achieve that goal. And also, if you have a behavior plan based on if you're going to make your goal on SEL concept. And then I put some learning habits. Well, how are they going to approach that goal? Because not everybody learns the same way, correct? Everybody's different. So I kind of put different learning habits on how they can go about that based on who the student is. That's why you have to make those connections from the very beginning, because that's how you start learning how your students are retaining concepts, what they like and what they don't like to do when it comes to learning. And then obviously you make them sign it. I make my kids sign it, and they feel very proud because they usually see their parents signing something that's important. So, hey, they get to sign their own goal. And then when you meet with them again to revisit the goal they created, you check off if they met it or if they did not meet it. If they did not meet it, then you know what, you with the student as a team, you want to see why. You can repeat that goal again. You can repeat the goal again, or create something a little bit more simpler that fits their needs, because maybe that wasn't the correct goal to create for with them based on what they're trying to make growth in. Okay. Let me go back to the presentation. Okay. So now once you create the goal, you want to see, well, where are they going to work, or what are they going to do to work on those goals? So usually I base mine on academics. Right now I'm just basing it on reading and math. So they have like the little checklists. I'm not sure what you implement in your classroom based on how you want them to make growth in their classroom. But I have little checklists. I usually have personalized activities in there based on the needs that they need to make growth on, which is usually the goal that they're creating. But that's why you wanna make the goal, because you need to figure out, okay, well, now what activities do I need to create for the student, or what activities do they want to So the steps I usually follow when it comes to SMART goals, always analyze your data. You got to use your data. That's where it's going to drive your instruction. That's where it's going to drive the conferences you're going to have with the student to create that SMART goal, which is step number 2, where you set your SMART goals. Because you need to know what is it that you're going to have conversations about. Because if you don't want to have it academic, then maybe it's something with their attendance or their behavior. Then that's where you're going to have to bring in your little anecdote. Sorry, that's my dog. That's where you want to bring your anecdotal notes to create those SMART goals for those behavior issues or the attendance issues. And then step 3 is to work on the SMART goal, whole group, small group, pairs, or individually. And then the last step is to revisit and have that conference with them again, or have them test to see if they made growth in that goal that you set up academically, and to see if they met the goal. And if they did, awesome, then it's time to create a new goal. And if they didn't meet it, then you know what, let's see, what is it that you're still having a hard time? Maybe we're gonna have to redo the goal, or keep the same goal, but different activities for them to do, okay? So know your data. Always pick the content or skill you want to drive your data to create the goal. The goal can be academic or non-academic. Model, you have to model how to create those goals, especially in the younger grades. And have the students voice their thoughts. If it's a goal that you're helping them create, but they don't agree with it, then that's where they need to be vocal and push them to be vocal. Even the little ones, they're very quiet. They expect us to do the thinking for them, right? But once they get that confidence and that trust, and you let them go and let them speak their mind on what they want to work on, then the goal becomes more purposeful and meaningful to them. And provide a variety of ways that they can achieve that goal. Don't just stay in a one lane. Okay, everybody's gonna do a math goal this way because you know what, that's the way we need to do it. Don't do it that way, because the students are not gonna, they're not gonna look forward to it. They're not gonna want to achieve that goal. Okay. I know the session was kind of fast. It was a little bit informative, more engaging. I just wanted to give you an overall on what is a SMART goal. That's the way I approach it for a lower grade point of view. For 3rd grade and up, you can approach it the same way, but this is where you're gonna have to be really creative. You have to figure out, well, how do I want my goal, SMART goal handout to look like, or how do I want it to look virtually? Sometimes not everybody's gonna want to do it virtually. Why? Because maybe they're not tech savvy. You're gonna have to probably have a hard copy, or you can have it just a basic recording. Some students, they don't like to manipulate the screen. Some students don't like to write. So having just conversations and recording it and making little notes on the side of what they voiced, that's another way to create a SMART goal. Because some of them are just more vocal than tactile or doing it technology-wise. Also, you need to be ready with what data source you're going to use, because when you go into those data goal conferences with nothing, then there's not going to be no purpose for that goal at all. The students expect us to know what we're doing, obviously, and we feed that onto them, especially at the beginning when we're teaching them how to create those goals. And it's amazing at the end of the year when the tables are turned around and they're the ones that are like, you know what, I'm having a hard time with this. Or they notice their behavior is not where it should be. They sometimes make it a goal. Their handwriting, for a 1st grade teacher, I have a lot of students I'm working on their handwriting for. And they tell me I can't write and I can't reach through the screen, right? So what do? We make that as something that we can work on together. So working with them on how to think working with them on how to decide what they want to work on, and working with them on how to communicate with you, it becomes easier to create those goals. And that's how I go about when it comes to having those conferences with my students, to make it meaningful and purposeful with them. Do I have any questions? Because we have a lot of time. No? Anybody? I'll share the link to this presentation. Actually, I'll put it in the chat box right now in case you want to have access to it. If you want to see how I went about it for your use, go ahead and put it. Hopefully, you can have access to it. And by all means, save it into your drive so you can refer to it later on. It's a little bit different because I'm a K2. I've had my experience in K2 when it comes to blended. But for my colleagues that are in here that are 3rd grade and up, you can still approach it the same way, but keep it simple, especially right now. You don't want to overwhelm the students when it comes to creating those goals virtually, especially for the older ones, because you want to keep them engaged. You want to actually have them make that growth virtually. So keep it simple, just like I did, the ones I've created. And it does help. It comes a long way, and you do see that growth. They do accomplish those goals, not right there and then. It just depends how long you want them to work on those goals based on what source you're using. Okay. Anything else?